this song over and over again. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes. And I kept saying, I mean, even as I was in the bed and trying to go to sleep, I kept hearing it over and over in my head.
One mind.
So it's one mind. It's such a blessing. And so when we used it for our affirmation for this month, it just goes right hand in hand. But now, when Aurelia read, it sounds so good when she does this. I mean, don't you love it? And then she goes back and she reads the words to a song over again, and it's just something about your voice and your, the peace of Aurelia that is just so wonderful. So, but you guys bear with me for a second, because I want to read this message to the congregation, which we really don't usually read aloud. But when it came through me, it was just like one of those things I thought, okay, I got to share this. So it says, I love the analogy that you are to God as a drop of water is to the ocean. So remember when we used to take tests and they would, say which one of these is out of place, and they would give you all these analogies and everything, and you had to see which one fit. So as a drop of water to the ocean is God, you are to God. So you have never been separate or apart from God. You have never been kicked out of the garden, condemned, or accused. Your estimation and self-judgments are like clouds in the sky. Clouds and rains happen within the atmosphere, but have no effect when we go higher. We toil in this life as if limitation were our truth. How much easier we would rest if we knew as we believe, or if we, did I write that wrong?
No.
Okay.
It is as we believe.
Okay, it is as we believe. Look, I got on my glasses too. I can't read my own stuff. To him that hath, it shall be given. To him who hath not, even that which he has shall be taken. Because as a man thinketh, so is he, or so shall he be. Let's endeavor to go beyond the judgments, limitations, and fears of this world and our humanness to the truth that lay beyond. So, I started thinking about this because, I kept saying to myself, we hear, excuse me for 1 second, and let me tell y'all this. Alan was not feeling well this morning. So y'all saw that I came in here late, and I don't even know if my dress was quite zipped all the way in the back. Because he usually checks me before it's time. Bless his heart. So if my dress is not all the way zipped, it's his fault. Remember, I blame everything on him. It's his fault for not feeling well. So I started thinking about this consciousness that we have that says to us that God is someplace else, like we're praying to something and somebody that is somewhere else. I mean, and it was amazing. I have to digress again, because this past week we witnessed the Cleveland Indians in Game 7. And I tell you, while we did not win this championship, as we all know by now, that was an awesome game. Oh my goodness. And I was so grateful to be able to witness all of this. But as we looked around at the crowd and it showed us, the scenes from on the field and the scenes in the stand, it's like without fail, everybody seemed to be in prayer. And as I sat there and I looked, and people were just, and making all kind of things and just so anxious about all of this, I started thinking about this peace of God that we all aspire to have, and how we get there. And so last month we talked all about abundance, and I was sharing that a lot of times what we need to do is not necessarily focus on the things that we want, but focus on the consciousness that brings us to the awareness that you are the place where God shows up. There is nothing that you don't have and nothing that you can't do.
Yes.
But as I started thinking about it, I was like thinking, we can look around the world and we can see in other places where people are experiencing things that seem like atrocities in our mind. we'll see that, there are places where they don't even have clean water to drink. And in our estimation, we're sitting here and we look at ourselves and our lives and we worry about stuff like cars and clothes and, and houses and titles. We worry and talk about those things. But in other parts of this world, that, the issues that people experience are so much greater. And so I started thinking about, this thing of, do we have an awareness that God is everywhere present? I mean, do we think that because people are experiencing the atrocities, whether it's war or famine or whatever, because they are experiencing those things, do we think that somehow God is missing in those places? And so as I started really thinking about what it is that we think about, what it is that I think about, and I kept thinking, yeah, I'm the place where God shows up, but is that not true for somebody who is experiencing whatever they're experiencing, and it seems overwhelming to them? You guys, we go through stuff, and I tell you, we will find the lessons that we need right where they are, whether it's in the place where we're in a game watching somebody else on the field, or it's in our own lives and our own relationships and the things that we're going through, or if it's a life or death matter. God is able to show up in us and give us exactly the lessons that we need to learn to get where we need to go, to grow into the people that we need to be. I mean, it's amazing to me how everything is just kind of like tailor fit for us and our own growth and our own good. So I started thinking, I was like, this wasn't always the truth. Who's driving what, or, who's wearing what, or, those things. That wasn't always the experience. I mean, Jesus, in Jesus' day, half of them didn't even have shoes, right? And yet and still we hold that era up as if that was the place, that was the time when God walked this earth. And so when we sit there and we think that our, our experience of God, whether we're blessed or not, is based on material stuff, I mean, we got it confused. So I started thinking, what is it that we need to change? For the longest, we've talked about this idea of prayer. And prayer as if it is something that we get down on our knees and do. When we pray to God, we've got these ideas that prayer is something that's apart and separate. But wonder if we really knew that we were the place where God shows up. Wonder if we really knew that, we're not just experiencing this thing called God. We are it. We operate as it. Let us have the consciousness of God, not over there, not praying to it, but rather embodying that which it is. Last week I talked about. Okay, so I gotta digress again because this is just. Alan is a comic book person. He is just a comic, but he's a comic book geek, right? And so on Friday, when Dr. Strange started, we had to be in the theater. Now, honestly, James, I am not, Archie and Jughead was about the extent of my comic knowledge, right? I am not a Marvel's girl. I know nothing about the superheroes, all of that stuff. Veronica, you remember those, right? That is the extent of my comic book stuff. We were just not those kids. So when he rushes me off to this theater to see Dr. Strange, I'm sitting there and I'm, big recliner seats. The theaters these days are really nice. I'm sitting there and he's got his popcorn and he's just, sitting there like so engrossed. And I'm like looking at this and I'm thinking to myself like, okay, let's, that's what we do. We suspend our judgments and all that stuff and get caught up into the world of comics, right? Although it doesn't even seem like a comic because the people are real. So as I'm watching this, it was exactly what I was talking about before last week. It was like this idea that everything in this is subject to time when we're in this realm. But there was a realm beyond that they, that they participated in. And once you recognize the power, it was as if you can open up portals and go through different things. I was like, oh, this is so neat. When you put it in a different perspective, these people, you know how we talk about this as new thought and a new truth? There have been people that have been pointing the direction to where we need to go to where we need to grow through all the time, and yet we don't see it. This is when we learn how to change our minds about the world we see changes. Yes. And so it becomes this thing of us knowing that, and there was a place where Dr. Strange, before he was always Dr. Strange, that was his name. But there was a point in that where it said you have to surrender. That was the same in the Matrix. You have to surrender. Get out of your, this idea that you are a self, you are your body, you are this, and recognize that you're so much more. And in opening to that awareness and surrendering to that awareness, he got what it is that he was supposed to get. So how do we get there? When we think who we are is about this physicality, when we think it's about this stuff, how do we get to the point where we realize our oneness as God, where we realize that we're not seeing another, I'm not seeing Jackie sitting there, I'm seeing God sitting there. How do we see that in every instance and every day? How do we show up in that? So when we think that prayer is something that we only do when we're on our knees, or when we, it becomes this thing of, I always tell people that every thought you think and every word you speak is a prayer. But, it takes nothing for me I was coming across 116th and there's a terrible accident. And the first thing I was like, how I say, my blessings, let me send some blessings over that way. I don't know what happened. I don't know if, whether people made it out all right or not, but I know that I've got, I got some blessings over here that I can share, that because I know that no matter what people are going through, sometimes it's the issues, those lessons that we're going through that we need to grow through. And those are the things that, sometimes we don't know how to do it. And so let me support you in that. Let us support one another in that. Let us support one another, because we know that at every moment, all we're running into is a different facet of ourselves. We are the place where God lives. And it's not a separate God. That's like saying that, somehow the sunshine, the sun rays are separate from the sun. It's all part of the same. We got this thing about, this idea about Niagara Falls, right? Niagara Falls. What is that, Lake Erie going over a hill? I mean, it's really no different, right? It's the same thing. It's the same water. But because it now shows, we see it at a different place, it becomes, and we think it's something different and something separate. It's not. All of us show up, and you're part of the ocean. You're a drop named Rosemary. I know, maybe you want to be 2 drops, but, you're a wonderful drop. Right? I mean, it becomes this thing. You're 3 drops, okay? Bless your heart, Joyce, we know. But it becomes this thing of, all of us, we have this idea that somehow we're different or special or something. But all of us are the place where God shows up. And a lot of times all we need to do is remember that for ourselves. And as we remember that for ourselves, through our remembering that, we can remind others. I am always like at this point of, knowing that there is something bigger for each of us to do. It was so neat. I posted on Facebook that I got ordained, during the little service. I put the little placard on there. And so many people commented and all that other stuff. I was so grateful. And it was so exciting, and everybody's like, oh, Sandra, and it was funny because yesterday I was in this meeting and I said, I have been speaking for years. years. I mean, years. Even before, just for years. And so I said, and really there's nothing that has really changed other than now all of a sudden it's been recognized, bless your heart, right? It's been recognized by my peers, and now it's like I have made a new commitment. There is a new commitment because there is something that goes along with it. And as I step into that space, into that energy, I get newness with it. And I feel so blessed and empowered by it. But at the same time, Joyce, I said, I was born a bishop. Right? I mean, all my life I've been a bishop. You say now I can be Reverend Bishop. So it's a wonderful thing, and it's an empowering thing, and it bears with it responsibilities that come with that. And so I'm honored and I'm grateful. And so it becomes this thing of me recognizing that through that there is a responsibility that every moment I am living that truth and I am teaching the truth that I know. It becomes this thing of, yes, let me always be just like Fran, just in prayer. Like, I got to bless it, right? And bless everything and everybody. Because that's what we're here to do. We're here to recognize and remember the truth about who we are. And as we remember the truth about who we are, we remind others of that truth. And if we're not living our truth of who we are, we're doing folks a disservice. There's only one mind, right? That mind is God's. We take part in that. We are in it. It's not separate and apart from us. And so as we stand up in that awareness and as we operate from that awareness, since minds are joined, we remind others of who they are. I love some of the stories that we hear about, back in the day when, I always get these guys' names mixed up. The guy with the coat of many colors. Joseph, thank you. That's a shame. People will probably think, how you called yourself a minister? But, I try not to carry around notes and all of that stuff, or even because God, is sometimes, I tell people all the time, I don't always know what it is that Spirit is going to point me to, but I do know what I'm supposed to say or how to open my mouth. Let me allow myself to be used by God. And so if I get it, and it comes all kind of different kind of ways, I see the coat of many colors. I know I'm supposed to talk about the guy with the coat of many colors, Joseph. So in the story, Joseph was his father's favorite, and his brothers resented him for it. And so it was this thing where they were going to throw him over in a pit, because, he had this dream that we're supposed to bow down to him. Who was he? We're going to kick him over into a pit. Until, of course, they saw that caravan coming around. You remember the story, right? They saw the caravan coming around, and they were like, oh, we could sell him. We could, sell him into slavery, and they could take him and, and go there. Now, Joseph could get caught up in a lot of the stuff that he went through, being a slave, right? He could get caught up in that. He could have gotten caught up in the fact that he was thrown in jail at a certain point, accused of certain things at a certain point. I mean, he went through a lot of atrocities in his life, right? Like we do. I mean, we have struggles in our families. We have struggles in our jobs. We have challenges that come up. And a lot of times we think that this is our life circumstance. We live in Cleveland, right? I love this place now. Let me send blessings over it. But when I was reading a guy's article the other day, he was visiting Cleveland and he hadn't lived here in years, but he came back and he was so amazed at the number of potholes in the street. And he talked about how bad it was and the poverty that he saw and the dilapidated housing. And he goes through and he talks about the city itself. And, but at the same time, when we look at our city, we see a great spirit. This resiliency that always seems to come back and to flourish. We look at our sports teams. We look at the people who love us and how we are able to galvanize together around issues. There's so much good about this place. And so if we get caught up in the momentary stuff, if we had been like Joseph or, in a situation where Joseph was, we might have looked at ourselves and thought, oh, my family sold me into slavery. I was, locked up in prison. He could get really bitter about the things that he sees. 20 years of anything is a pretty major deal. But then one day the king had a dream. He had a dream and he needed somebody to interpret his dream, and Joseph interpreted his dream. And not only was he brought out of prison, but he was put in charge of the food supply. And so when there was a great famine in the land, and this happens all the time in different places, there's a great famine in the land. There's a great famine in the land, and now his brothers doesn't even know that they need him. They just know that they need food. And so they go to get food. And so when they bow down before Joseph, just like he saw in his dream, they didn't recognize that this is the same brother that they had thrown into the pit. This is the same brother that they sold into slavery. This is the same brother who ended up being in jail and having all kinds of things that happened to him. They didn't recognize that this is the same guy. And now they need food. And so it becomes this thing, if we get stuck in the moments of our lives, we don't recognize the blessings that are there. And then we don't recognize, so many of us don't recognize that when we get in a place of power, it's not to hold a grudge or to be mad or angry like, you dirty dogs, you did something terrible to me. You threw me in you did. He didn't do all of that. That wasn't even his mindset. Where is your father? Go get him and bring him back. It becomes this thing of how do we express and know that everything that we go through is something for us to grow through, and that God has put a divine plan that a lot of times we don't know anything about. He has put a divine plan over our lives, and if we show up fully in the moment, without all that animosity, without all that anger, without all that fear, if we show up in the moment, we get the blessing, and we get to be the blessing. We get to be the love that it is, that's our truth. We are the place where God shows up. It's so awesome when you start to think about all the possibilities of your life when you really are start to listen. I'm so glad when David was telling us last week about, was that last week or 2 weeks ago that you were here and you told us about that incident with your truck? And it was a couple of weeks ago. And he said he heard so clearly. That, when we hear the voice of God, it becomes this thing of let us not only listen, but follow and as it leads. He told him, all he said something simple was stop. Just stop. And a lot of times, most people can't even listen because who said that? They're so busy worrying about all of that other stuff. Who said that? When there was this one time God was like, it spoke so strongly and so loudly to me. You know how you want to look around and look up under the seat and see who it is that's talking to you as if it matters. Or the arguments that I've had with God. Well, how do I know you're really God? I was like, you sound a lot like Sandra. Well, who would you rather me sound like? And that's why I tell you the voice of God sounds like a smart aleck to me. But sometimes it's so simple. To just listen is so simple. And to just, to speak blessings over one another is so simple. To recognize all the time that you live, move, and have your being in this thing called God. It's not separate. It's not apart. It is the very energy that animates your life. That is your life. It's that, and for those of you who, because I have been honored to be there when my mother transitioned, when my dad transitioned. It's just like a little like wisp. It's like an energy that just goes. And we want to make it seem like it's so much more, but when we recognize that God is the very energy that animates us, when we recognize that, then we get, what's there to fear? I think about that all the time. What is there to fear when we recognize that? And that it's not running or outrunning death or outrunning the devil or any of that other stuff. It's that just you've always been right there. They talk about this as close to me as my next breath. It is your breath. It is also what breathes you. It is you. How is that not beautiful? How is that not glorious? How is that not love? Oh my gosh. And so it becomes this thing of at every moment it's just being able to say yes. Yes to the moment. Yes to the Spirit. Yes to knowing that it is breathing you all the time. I love this. Yeah. I love the way it shows up, and no matter what, because you do these things and you think that somehow you've got to be prepared, you've got to be this, you've got to be that. Remember, Jesus told his disciples, go into all the land and tell them the good news, and if they accept you, great. If the household accepts you, great, stay there, right? But if they don't, shake the dirt from your feet and keep moving. Because people, we will all get it. We will all get there. There is no place else to go. There is nothing else to be. There is nothing else to do. We're going to get there. Right. Not some, it's so funny because in some schools of thought, they kind of try to scare you into stuff, try to scare you into doing something. But the truth is so subtle and so sweet. There's nothing to fear. You're going to get there. Not going to be in purgatory or some way station somewhere sitting up waiting on processing. It's only one. It's only one. I love it. So, no matter where people are, no matter what their experience, whether it's here in Cleveland or the greater United States or in any of the countries that are going through devastation, those folks are not different and separate and apart from you. They are you. And as we look, they say that the eyes are the windows of the soul. That's because God is the soul. That is, I love that example. So I talk about the ocean, the drop to an ocean. But, a lot of times we think that, if you look at and think about the ocean as water, that whole idea that, we're just the faucets through which it flows. And how do we choose to be? Do we choose to open up our spigot and let it flow full flash? Or do we want to, close it off a little bit? Oh, this is just too much, right, for people. And so we want to turn down the volume a little bit. We want to turn it down. But man, if you will know that you are the place, open it up, right? And just be the love that you are. So, are you already watching your clock over there? Any comments? Any questions? Any comments? Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay.
I just want to say it's just amazing how that there is but one line, and how our service correlates with what you're saying. It's just amazing. There's one mind, so you just have to stay in that place.
And it's
recognize.
Right, and it's so funny because I had of course I always jot down a few things because I always think to myself, I want to be sure I say this and I want to be sure I say that and blah blah blah. And so since I walked in a little late today because Alan didn't pick me up, I don't know where the notes are, right? But at the same time, I always just am like, you know, God, this is yours, right? This is yours. And so when I think that I want to know what Spirit is supposed to do or how Spirit is supposed to show up or what Spirit is supposed to talk about, it's in those moments that I know that I'm mistaken because I'm thinking it's about me. And so it becomes this thing of how do I get out of my own way and how do I just do as I'm led to do? I mean, because you know I got stories from my own life. I always used to think, and I still do, that there ought to be a book of Sandra that goes in the Bible at some point. Because I got my own lessons that I'm learning, right? But my lessons are no different than Job's lessons or different from Ruth's or Naomi's or whoever else that you find in the Bible, you know. Our lessons are no different from those. We just are in a different time with a different perspective. And yeah, you're the king and the queen of your own life, you know, and in your own experience. These lessons are here for all of us. The Course in Miracles, it talks about it being a required course because we're all on a course. We're all moving towards that one awareness of our oneness with God and our oneness with one another. It's no separation. And so we have learned over and over again this idea that, you know, we're in competition with each other or, you know, that somebody's out to get us. We've learned about fear. We've gotten caught up on so many things. But all of these are the lessons. And so I know, you know, for me, I sit there and I think to myself, like, you know, I have things that I know that I'm supposed to be doing. Right? And if I'm true to Sandra and Sandra stuff and not trying to live and be Aurelia over here, and I do me, I get the lessons that I'm supposed to get. When I'm trying to be like somebody else or when I'm, you know, thinking that it's about all the other folks, I'm off course. And I don't get on course until I start living my truth. That's the same for all of us. All of us have a truth. All of us have a calling. All of us have a desire. Yes. All of us have something that we do well. And it may not look like what society says it's supposed to look like. I watched I love TED Talks. Anybody ever watch TED Talks? Yeah. I love TED Talks. And so I'm always amazed at the numbers of people who go on there and they start talking about the ways that they found who they are supposed to be, their authentic selves. And so when we're trying to, you know, be somebody else, we're all off course because God only created one of us, right? Just one. And you're supposed to show up and do your part as that one, right? Not somebody else's stuff. I don't have to be Dr. Strange or Morpheus or Trinity or any of the other folks out there. I don't have to be any of them. I don't have to be my girlfriends. I don't have to sit up and collect degrees or clothes to make me feel like I'm special. I need to show up and do what gives me joy. This is what gives me joy. And if I stay in that energy, I'm in my right place. Yes. Yes.
I like listening to you talk. I have to share it, and Rosemary knows this story, or it's not a story.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sounds like a story, but it's not a story.
It's lovely, and I still think about them greens, but go ahead.
But let me share, I was working and had been up late and late at the office, Rosa, and this is when I was going to Living Truth, and I think we had Bible study on Wednesday night or something like that. And before I turned off the lights and started headed toward the car, and these are the words that I said. I'm telling you. I said, Jesus, I'm not going to Bible study tonight. I told Jesus.
Right.
I was in a Jesus mode, not a God mode. And I said, Jesus, I'm not going to Bible study tonight. So in order to go home, I needed to make a right out of the driveway down left.
Mm-hmm.
my car, and I told my car decided it was going to the left. So it went left and down Lawrenceville. And I said, Jesus, I said, I'm tired, and I am not going to Bible study tonight. So okay, my car continued to go down Lawrenceville. It did. I didn't know what it okay. And it got to Cedar and made the left. I said, Jesus, I am not going to Bible study tonight. The car pulled into the driveway and parked. I said, I'm not getting out of this car. Something opened the door. I said, you know what, I'm going to leave early. I don't feel like this tonight, Jesus. I get in and I said, Rosemary, you want what? She said, I thought you weren't coming. I said, Jesus. Anyway, the minister, Ann, started talking, and whatever she was talking about, it was basically what I was going through. I hoo-hooed and helped everybody hoo-hoo there. Okay? And, so I walk out, get in the car, and someone, I said, thank you, Jesus. I drive back, no, that's not the end of the story. I drive, get into my garage, go up the stairs, and I have an obnoxious 15-year-old son at that time. So anyway, I said, I'm so tired. I think I'll lay down just for a minute. And I laid down with my clothes on, just laying down awake. The door opens. No knock. Well, no, a little knock. Mom! Whatever. I jump up on top of the bed. This is the truth. And I get ready to do talking with my foot like this. This is the truth. And I said, John! You are so blessed! I love you! I love you! Now you got to get out of here! I'm a Christian! Jesus is on your side! And that's the end of my story.
You are funny. And how many times have all of us done that?
Yes.
I mean, that's the story of Jonah, right? I'm not going there. Jesus done been told where you needed to go, where you're supposed to show up. He's not going there. And here you are. Instead of it being a well, you're in a car. How much better is that? That's modern times for you, right?
Jesus took the wheel.
Yeah. Children, go where I send thee. How shall I send thee? I love it. All right. So anybody else? So I'm so glad you shared. I'm so glad you guys are all here. Jackie, it's so good to see you. Blessings. It's wonderful, and I am extraordinarily blessed, and I knew that this day was coming. I'm so glad it was with you guys, and I thank you. I thank you all, and I thank you for your continued prayers as I go through this journey and as I stand up in this truth for which I was sent. I got ordained this past week, so yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so pray with me. So Father God, Mother God, in this moment, we just recognize you as all there is, in all, through all, as all. God, sometimes I don't even know that words are necessary. It is just the feeling or the knowing in our bones that we are one with you. So we can never be off course. We can think that we're taking detours on a long route. Yeah, we can be in that awareness. But God, we know that we are never separate and apart. So God, I thank you for this journey that is our life at this moment. I thank you for the truth that there is only one place to go. In truth, it is right where we are. God, this thing will seem to take different forms. Let us not be fearful, and let us get to a place of acceptance and love for what is. God, let us bless not just our lives, but every life that we touch, whether it's here or places that we don't even know the names of. God, we just bless them. Bless you. Thank you for being you, me, it, all. I just give thanks in this moment, God, and I let it be. And so it is. Amen, y'all.
Amen.
Thank you.